Now with all the latest stories making the headlines, it's the ITV News.
Russia launches a deadly attack on the city of Lviv. 7 people were killed in the western city, which has become a haven for refugees and until now been largely spared.
The number of killed and injured we have might not be final. Attacking that car garage was a barbaric act. It was entirely civilian.
Also tonight, the Prime Minister gets ready to face Parliament and his party after being fined for breaching lockdown rules. Prince Harry pays tribute to Ukraine's extraordinary team at the Invictus Games. And sunshine and smiles as millions enjoy an Easter break without restrictions.
Easter always feels very special with lots of new life, but this year, having been closed for the last 2 years, it's just been superb.
This is ITV News with Duncan Golestani.
Good evening. Russia today launched a deadly attack on the city of Lviv ahead of what is expected to be a much larger offensive designed to grind down Ukraine's defences. This morning, missiles hit targets across the western city, killing at least 7. Until now, Lviv has largely escaped the worst of the bombardment and become a safe haven for Ukrainians fleeing elsewhere and a major hub for Western weapons flowing into the country. But it is to the east where many believe Russia is about to intensify its assault. From Kyiv, Peter Smith has the latest.
Russia bombarded Ukrainian cities this morning. Even Lviv, considered Ukraine's safe haven until now. Ukraine has confirmed 4 rocket attacks hit the city. Lviv's mayor says at least 7 have been killed, 11 are wounded, including 1 child. 3-year-old Artem was in a hotel for refugees here. With his mum, they fled to Lviv to escape the war in their home city of Kharkiv. But Putin's missiles found the little boy here too. The window smashed, his mother says. A piece of glass just cut through his fingers. ITV News understands military targets have been hit, but this was a tyre-fitting car garage. Russians, what have you done? This woman asks.
The number of killed and injured we have might not be final. Attacking that car garage was a barbaric act. It was entirely civilian. People who went to work this morning. Unfortunately, this is a tragedy.
Lviv is Ukraine's westernmost city, just 40 miles from the EU and NATO territory. Today's attack is a deadly warning about Russia's reach as this invasion escalates.
We mourn the dead, and we must be as vigilant as possible, because it seems like the enemy is getting wilder, and the number of hits on civilians will increase. We can see it already in our cities in the east of our country.
This is what he means. An even more intense attack has been unleashed on cities like Kharkiv. This woman had to be pulled away from her father's body. He was killed in the street.
Evacuate to where? They are hitting the whole of Ukraine. You see, they hit Lviv and Dnipro today, everywhere.
Those injured from the east are being taken to hospital in Dnipro. They're seeing more and more civilians coming in here with burn injuries. Meanwhile, Putin's troops close in on Mariupol. The mayor of this port city says at least 20,000 have been killed. Terror and devastation are reaching every part of Ukraine.
And Peter is in Kyiv tonight. Peter, how much of a shock will this have been for the people of Lviv?
Well, we know that Lviv has been targeted by Russia before, but this is the biggest loss of civilian life in Lviv since the war began. It was, as we said, a safe haven for many Ukrainians fleeing the war in the east. They believed this was a place where they could go to for shelter and remain in their country, their own country, without having to go into Poland next door. Lviv has hosted more than 1 million Ukrainian refugees from other parts of the country since the war began. So that is obviously a shock to many of the people who believed that they did have safe haven there. But we also know that Lviv has been used by the West as a route to direct weapons into Ukraine. This is the preferred route to get weapons into President Zelensky's troops' hands with the rail network that reaches all parts of Ukraine. So we know that this is a symbolic attack. The last time that Lviv was hit was when President Biden was visiting Warsaw next door. So President Putin has previous for these symbolic attacks, and it's to send a message to the West, also sending a message to Ukrainians that no part of their national soil will escape Russia's reach. But also I'd just like to update, we heard about 3-year-old Artem in our report. His condition tonight is now stable, but 3 others in Lviv remain in intensive care.
Peter Smith, thank you very much. 2 British fighters have been paraded on state TV in Russia after being captured in the southern city of Mariupol. Sean Pinner and Aidan Aslin were fighting alongside Ukrainian troops. Our correspondent Carl Dinnan is in Moscow for us now. Carl, can you tell us what happened?
Well, Sean Pinner and Aidan Aslin both settled in Ukraine about 4 years ago. According to their families, the 2 men have made it their home. They both joined the Ukrainian Marines and seem to have been captured in the fighting around Mariupol. We have a photograph of the 2 men before their capture. Sean Pinner on the left is a former British soldier from Watford. Aidan Aslin is a former care worker from Newark in Nottinghamshire. What's happened today is that state television here in Russia has started running videos of the 2 men. We're not showing those because it's not clear whether they're acting under duress or not. In those videos, the men are played a message from the wife of a pro-Kremlin Ukrainian politician called Viktor Medvedchuk. In that message, she calls on the Ukrainians to swap Mr. Medvedchuk for the 2 British men in a prisoner exchange. The 2 men are asked whether they agree with that. They say they do, and then both of them make pleas to Boris Johnson to facilitate that prisoner exchange. Now, it's not clear at all whether that's even possible and whether Boris Johnson has any influence over such a thing, but the Foreign Office has said that it's in touch with the 2 men's families and that it deplores the use of prisoners of war for political purposes.
Carl Dinnan in Moscow, thank you. The Prime Minister is under significant pressure as he returns from the Easter break to face the Commons for the first time since he was fined by police for breaking lockdown rules. Our political correspondent Romilly Weeks is here with me now. Romilly, a big week for Mr Johnson then.
Yes, Duncan, the Prime Minister's been in checkers, but he can't have had the most relaxing Easter break because even by his standards, he's got a very difficult week to navigate. Tomorrow, when he appears before MPs for the first time since he was fined, he's expected to apologise again and then try to move the agenda on to the other big issues facing the country. But the opposition parties don't want that to be the end of it. They intend to try to force a vote on whether he should be investigated for misleading Parliament. Today, Conservative ministers offered this defence.
Well, I think the Prime Minister's been clear that he's never knowingly misled Parliament. That is the important thing in the ministerial code. But equally, it's an ongoing investigation, and the Prime Minister is going to come and answer questions from MPs later this week.
The Prime Minister will be taking heart from the fact that the appetite in his party, at least, to depose him seems to have rather dissipated. But remember, the police haven't issued fines yet for the more raucous parties in Downing Street, the ones that are rather more difficult to explain away. And this weekend, there were reports that at one of those parties, the Prime Minister was actually serving drinks. If, as expected, the Prime Minister is issued with more fines, that defence that he wasn't aware that parties were going on will be even harder to sustain.
Romilly, thank you. Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has been spoken to by police after a video showed her in a barber's shop without a mask. Police Scotland say they reminded her of the importance of wearing a face covering when there is a legal requirement to do so, but no further action will be taken. The force says it was in line with their proportionate approach to the pandemic. Today, Scotland has removed the legal requirement to wear a mask in indoor settings, in line with the rest of the UK. The move brings Scotland in line with COVID rules in places across the rest of the United Kingdom. Almost 450 people have died in floods in South Africa. Prince Harry has praised the Ukrainian Invictus team, who managed to leave the country and travel thousands of miles to compete in the Netherlands. He will remain at The Hague until the Games end. His wife Meghan is now back in the United States. From the Games, our royal editor Chris Shipp reports.
They are warming up to compete, but the Invictus Games has never been about winning. It's about the training and the rehabilitation that comes with it. There are 500 competitors here from 20 countries, including Ukraine, all wounded either mentally or physically. Meghan has now gone back to California, but Harry will stay in the Netherlands until the Games close on Friday. There were no public engagements for him today, but he did talk about the Ukrainian team during an Invictus TV programme.
And I think what people need to remember, or perhaps don't even know yet, is a vast majority of the Ukraine team was serving in some shape or form. So they removed their uniforms, put their team strips on, jumped on the coach, came over here, slept for a couple of days, tried to decompress, and then was straight into it. And then they've got to go back. So I think to have them here is extraordinary.
Some members of Team Ukraine competing here say they feel guilty that they have left home this week to come to the Netherlands. But for some, this tournament has even reunited families. Artem has been fighting Russian troops in eastern Ukraine. His wife Karina moved to Lithuania for safety with their son. This week at least, they are back together. But you will leave Invictus, you will return to Ukraine, and you will fight the Russian occupiers.
Yes, understand. Yes. I am fight Ukraine, fight Russian occupant.
And he knows who set these games up for wounded soldiers like him.
Prince Harry, big friend Ukraine, big friend Invictus team.
The Invictus Games clearly does benefit from the worldwide attention that Prince Harry generates for this event. But there is also an acknowledgement that he too has benefited from being here this week. A reminder for him and his newish team in America of what can be achieved and how lives can be changed. Chris Shipp, ITV News, The Hague.
Finally, after 2 years when the Easter weekend has been subject to COVID restrictions, millions have taken the opportunity to enjoy a break. The sunshine has helped, of course. For businesses, it's been the boost they desperately need ahead of the summer season. Martha Fairley reports.
At Bockett's Farm Park in Surrey, it's not just the Easter bunny with a spring in their step. For the first time since 2019, they've been able to open without restrictions for the Easter bank holiday weekend. And they've had thousands of visitors rushing back to pet the lambs and enjoy a carefree day out.
This is one of the first things that we've been to, and certainly as a family group, it's great. And it's fantastic weather, so couldn't be better.
I think the last time we came here it was sort of restricted entry. We weren't able to do all of the activities, so yeah, it's certainly back to normality.
Crowds cheering on the popular pig race weren't possible last Easter, but this year the season's off to a flying start.
Fantastic, better than ever. We've been sold out pretty much every day, an amazing atmosphere. I mean, Easter always feels very special with lots of new life, but this year, having been closed for the last 2 years, it's just been superb.
These campers in North Yorkshire are just some of the estimated 8 million Brits holidaying here this Easter, boosting the economy by over £2 billion.
We've definitely noticed quite a peak in our bookings. People are planning ahead much more in the future. Our bookings are a lot more popular in the camping season than they usually are at this time of year. So yeah, it's a really exciting season to come.
And the added bonus of good weather also brought plenty of visitors to the South Wales coast, boosting profits for local bars and restaurants.
This Easter weekend has been a huge success for outdoor venues like this, which are almost entirely sold out. But it's proving a bit more difficult for those attractions that rely on overseas visitors.
Despite that, after 2 challenging years, this Easter has exceeded many expectations and is an encouraging sign the tourism and leisure industry is finally bouncing back. Martha Fairley, ITV News, Surrey.
And that is it for now. We'll be back with the news at 10. Until then, enjoy your evening.